Hey y'all, welcome back.
昨べは助けてくれてありがとう。私キア。あなたは？
This is where we were at last, I don't remember. Wait a sec. Let's go ahead and do this. So yeah, as you remember, last time, we, I think, fucked up here. Because, we didn't get everyone selected. But I'm not sure if, like, I'll be able to come back here and check things as we progress, or if I literally just fucked everything up. So, we decided to go on.
昨べは助けてくれてありがとう。私キア。あなたは？
Alright, we were right there. Alright, let's go!
お名前は何というの？キーというの？愛称なの？お医者様なの？だって薬瓶がたくさんあるから。それでキー、あなたの年はいくつ？
The taciturn expression he had of her must have been due to the way that they met. The girl who called herself Kia talked a lot. She'd asked for his name, his line of work, and his age. She smiled while whispering that the room was lovely, and then asked again if his wounds were all right. My wounds are fine. They're nothing to worry about for now. He kept saying that, but she just wouldn't believe him. She appeared to not know about the phenomenon equation. Guy thought it quite unusual, though he'd heard that at least one part of some tier doubted the equation's existence. By listening to Kia, he figured out that Ati had carried them both all the way back. For some reason, Ati wasn't there. Maybe she wasn't good with kids.
奥さんは出かけたわ。まだどこかに用事があるんですって。
ビズがあったかな。彼女は奥さんではないよ。
そうなの？そうなの？
ああ、そうだ。
Was there a need to ask that twice in a row? Guy shrugged his shoulders.
そうなの？
ああ。いた。少し失礼するよ。
His torn muscle fibers and broken bones stung. Guy put his right hand against his side. Activate cranial organs. Begin substantial healing via cracking. As he correctly rewrote the scattered numbers one by one, his broken ribs slotted back into place. He didn't need his right eye to tell. All that was smashed was healed anew, and all that was broken was replaced. Even so, it hurt quite a bit. Light leaked out of his palm. It sparkled like blue jasper. The cracking light had no reflection in the mirror, and penetrated the body with a shallow coolness. Only a few seconds. It was sickeningly easy to heal external wounds like this. This blue light had defeated and discouraged many surgical doctors. And a pair of eyes were gazing with great interest at that spectacle.
何それ？綺麗な光。それに傷は大丈夫？
これがクラッキングだな。傷はもう、ほら、治っていると思う。
She poked him in the side several times. No pain, just a slight numbness.
クラッキング。それをかざすと怪我が治ってしまうの？不思議ね。綺麗にパチパチ輝く。
手品さ。面白いものでもない。そう珍しくもない。
He erased the endoscopic light that his right eye had created, and clapped his hands together. Thus ended Guy's trick. Kia had been staring intently at it, and now raised her head as if remembering something. She spun around, looking at things in the room, then nodded.
そうだ。食事を用意したの。お礼に。少しお掃除もしたけれど、まだしていないところがたくさん。キーアはお掃除続けるから、ギーはご飯を食べてしまって。
いや、お礼は結構だよ。助けたのは僕ではなくて、あの女性だよ。
奥さんにはお弁当を渡しておいたの。ギーには
りなさい。あと奥さんではないから。
知ってるわ。キー助けてくれたって。奥さん、あの人が来てくれるようにそう計算していたでしょ。
She saw through that. This child.
いいから帰りなさい。家事の手はもう足りているから。
本当に？
本当に。
いや、帰りたくない。
She said that and pouted. Guy was surprised. A child who didn't want to go home was effectively an orphan, like Paul, Lupo, and Polun. Polun? Kids like them weren't rare. In general, such kids hated their foster parents and educational facilities, at least all the ones that Guy knew. Not once over the last 10 years had he heard of a registered foster parent or facility that didn't treat orphans as they were mouths to feed. Not even once.
この子が。
何？キー。
No, this girl was no orphan. Her clothes were in too good a condition. Just by looking at her, one could tell that she was probably the daughter of some citizen in the 6th class or higher, from one of the few families with blessings to count.
妙だな。家出のわけもあるまし。
And yet she was unlike any orphan he'd ever met. The education program received by 6th class girls was basically a re-imprinting of the city plan and the upper tier's superiority. There was no way she'd autonomously move to another tier. Such conduct was illegal. It was prohibited by the city law at the core of her imprinting. A case of failed imprinting? No, the chances of it weren't zero, but even for a joke, it's not that good. There had to be another possibility. Another possibility. For example, the possibility that she was kidnapped by a slave trader? Even by mistake, no 6th class citizen would be put in those lineups. If she was, she'd be very expensive. Plus, she was too much for that ogre to deal with. It was a matter of conduct and temperament.
聞くのが早いか。キーヤ、そのカバンの中身見せてもらえるかな。
いいわ。でも下着はダメ。恥ずかしいから。桃色の袋だから開かないでね。絶対に開かないでね。
Was she showing displeasure? No, that wasn't it. Kia showed him the suitcase with a surprising directness. She removed the combination lock and opened it right under the engine lamp. It looks just like a traveling suitcase. Such absent-minded thoughts threw Guy's mind into chaos. I can see her suitcase, but what is this? What is this? Tightly packed. Very tightly packed. He thought it looked like a traveling case, but he couldn't infer anything at all from that. Girls' clothes of diverse colors were packed together tightly. Yes, it really was a traveling suitcase. Guy doubted his own eyes. Girls' clothing, probably all in Kia's size. They were all crammed in there. Countless articles of clothing. Tightly packed. A traveling suitcase for a person to go on a journey somewhere. For someone heading to a faraway place. The last time he'd seen such a multi-purpose item was... yes, back then. It must have been 10 years ago. He nearly drowned in sentimentality, but he managed to stop himself. This wasn't about that. This many clothes packed so tightly together.
いや、待て。混乱しているぞ、キー。なんだ、この服の量は。仕立ても悪く。これは。
Guy looked up at the girl peering down at him. I'll have to ensure my voice is calm, to prevent his own confusion from being conveyed. However, the voice that rolled out from his lips came with a number of faults.
これはすごいね。こんなに服 服がある。キア、どこへ行くつもりだった
ここ
Here.
なんでもないの。持っていたもの全部持ってるだけだから。
This isn't nothing. What a bad joke. She wanted to come here. With so many clothes. Packed into her suitcase so tightly. What kind of wardrobe certainly wouldn't come cheap. Even if they were mass-produced by an engine factory, they'd be luxury items even for an 8th-class citizen. The clothes in her suitcase, they were in such good condition, just like what Kia was wearing right then. They ought to have cost her a lot. If there were only one or two, he wouldn't be surprised. It was because there were so many, packed together so tightly, that even if a maid outfit, there was even a maid outfit inside. This wasn't something a girl would walk around with. This was a small fortune.
なら質問を変えよう。君の家はどこにあるのかな。どうぞ。ちなみにここは仮想第28区域7層目だ。
ご飯冷めちゃう。
Dodging the question. She said that and pouted again. Guy heaved a sigh. Such a huge traveling case. Why? Filled with expensive clothes. Why? Her polite answers imply a good upbringing. Why? Why doesn't she want to go home? Why?
早く食べて。冷めちゃうし片付かないし、熱いうちの方が美味しいのだし。
He just didn't know who or what was this girl. Adorable, that's what she is. The rain poured down. It poured directly into some tiers, and was conveyed through these supports into others. Countless raindrops covered the whole of Inganock. In the lowest tier, they fell down in waterfalls. Between the gray clouds and the infinite mist enveloping the city, any rain that began to fall often took a while to stop. It was almost guaranteed to still be raining tomorrow. Rainwater contaminated by smog poured down across his vision. Guy liked the rain. It was useful for taking his mind off the illusionary clown. Guy had gone out in the rain, taking Kia with him. He pulled the collar up on his reconstructed cloak and covered the girl's face with his sleeve. None of the clothes the girl brought with her had a hood. If only she had a, Sekien umbrella? You thought? Sekien? The umbrella had been invented in a place called London in a foreign land of Sekien. It hadn't penetrated into the eastern continent yet, and it had reached the central northern empire. But that was a long time ago. It's all over 10 years old now. Ever since Inganock became isolated, no form of exchange or trade had taken place with any other continent.
どこへ行くの？
Kia asked inside his cloak. She didn't seem any different from before. He was going to see Fixer Stanislaw. This could become a formal request, but Guy wouldn't mind. He observed the girl's clothes in detail. What she was wearing wasn't first-rate, but it was still very well made. Yet she called those her going-out clothes. They were huge pieces of evidence for finding a lead on her home. He needed to locate her guardian. He didn't care whether it was a third-class citizen, a second-class, a sewing engine, or a dressing engine. Return her home. Yes, to where this girl belongs. If left alone, she was bound to be kidnapped. Of course, if that happened, Guy would become the culprit. He wanted to avoid squabbles with the police organization, city management, as much as possible. His walk through the rain quickened. He pulled the girl along as she tried to gaze at the snail crawling up one of the roadside trees. They were headed for an infinitely crowded street. For a moment, his eyes wandered off towards the back alley. Should he use the shortcut or not? Guy hesitated, then entered the alley, a roundabout and narrow path. The buildings sheltered from them most of the rain. Several people had come into the alley before them. Were they sleeping in the rain, or taking the same detour? One of the silhouettes waved at him. He knew who it was before he could even ask. Salem. I've run into her again?
これで3日連続運命的な出会いかしら。お互いいくらか濡れてしまってるけど。その子。
Before Guy could open his mouth to explain, Salem gave an expression of deep surprise. Along with that feeling, there was also a slight sense of disappointment. She was misunderstanding something. Guy sighed and shook his head, hoping to explain himself.
君の想像は多分外れだ。この子は
キリアと言います。よろしく。サレムさん？よろしく。その子、君、娘？
違うよ。迷子でね。これから家を探しに行くところだ。
そうよね。そうよね。今日の冗談はびっくりしたわ。
It's not even a joke.
まさか奥方でもいるのかって。そんなわけない。いいえ、サレム。いい奥さんはいるみたい。いるの？
いないいない。キーヤ、初対面で嘘をつくのは良くない。都市計画プログラムで習わなかった。返事は円滑な人間関係の基礎だ。
He tried saying things he vaguely remembered. For some reason, he felt a bit sorry for Salem. Her expression remained stuck in its surprised state.
よろしい。
Kia's changing expressions reminded him of those 3 children. How many parts of their own bodies did those children have to leave behind? Guy shrugged his shoulders, then said, "Some other time," and left in a hurry to fix her Stanislaus. What the fuck's with the quotes there? If you're not familiar, these are Japanese quotes. They're a little like bracket thingies. Anyhow. I suppose. Okay. That was why Guy didn't notice. Of course. Those were the first things he said. Guy wiped the rain off the girl's cheeks and hair with a handkerchief as Stanislaw began to explaining. If the man was more agile, he might have turned Guy around himself. His anger was so forceful in its silence, Guy couldn't help but imagine him doing such a thing.
レディーです。
ドクター、もう冗談を覚えさせたのか。
冗談なんて言ってないよ。ミスター・スタニスワ君。
ミスター？
ええ、ミスター。
作法はある。いいとこのガキか。いい。お前の手持ちじゃおおむね依頼不成立だ。今までの貸しを使うかね。
貸し。
For a moment he hesitated. He always refused excessive remuneration for his healing, and that he had been a boon to this merchant. Would he use that, right here and now? How many years' worth would that be? Guy looked at Kia. She'd narrowed her eyebrows and was shaking her head. Don't overdo it, her expression said. Guy made his decision as soon as he read it.
貸しを使う。よろしく頼む。
ギー、キアはきっと役に立つわ。一切の邪魔をしないと約束するし。
ダメだ。君が言わない以上、こうするのは僕の絶対のルールだ。初対面の人に二度も膨れ面を見せない。君は淑女なんだろ。
はい。
仲のいいことで。本当に初対面か。しかしドクター、本気か。
貸しと金は使い切る主義でね。本気だと思う。
初めて聞いたぞ。なるほど。そういう主義なら仕方がない。今のはここ1年で最も笑える冗談だった。
As he said that, Fixer Stanislaw's face twisted, as if unsatisfied. Was it a difficult request? If so, maybe Guy had been too impulsive. He could see Stanislaw writing reluctantly in his notebook. Could he expect results from this? Still, he was making such a discontented face. He'd known this tertopod long enough to understand his expressions, but this was just... She was also making quite the troubled face. He could tell this right away. I like this.
へえ、そうなの。あんな強欲亀じいに依頼なんかしちゃってむしり取られても私知らないからね。それでいい女の子連れたまま仕事してたの？こんな時間になるまでずっとお仕事？あ、待って、言わないで。してたでしょ。疲れた顔の具合がそんな感じ。仕事した後神経太いってかほんと無神経。知らない子連れたまま他人の内臓いじりなんてよくできたもんだわ、ドクター。
気にすることか。
何？開き直ってるのそれ？
開き直ったりはしないよ。そうか。気にするか。
私が患者ならね。
そういうものかな。
そういうものなの。そんなだから待ち合わせも忘れるのさ。もう夜なんだから。せっかく買った懐中時計が持ち腐れ。
見る日もある。
見ない日もある？
そういうこともあるかな。
もう何それ。
いや、君が正しいよ。
He looked past the tobacco smoke floating through the tavern and out the window. He could see a sky unchanged since that morning. A wet sky. The rain continued to pour, soaking through the cloaks of anyone outside. Night never came to a rainy Inganock. It was night in terms of time, but that was all. Time didn't apply to the sky's darkness, or the city's lights. That was how it was on rainy days. It'd been been a simple truth for the past 10 years. Consequentially, there were said to be two suns, the cloudless sun and the rainy son. The other son born 10 years ago, the one which erased the night on rainy days. It was just a rumor. No one had ever proven it. The sparkle on their side of the thick gray clouds couldn't be seen with human eyes anyway.
ねえ、なぜ夜なのに明るいの？あと、このパンとっても甘くて美味しい。何これ？
太陽が2つあるって話聞いたことない？雨の日にはね、別のお日様が昇るのさ。あとそれはね、パンじゃなくてな、遠い生協の小麦粉料理。バターをね、パンに塗るよりずーっと多く練り込むの。ふわふわでパンじゃないみたいでしょ。硬くないもんね。
うん、硬くない。柔らかくて。あ、本当バターの香り。パティは物知りなのね。ねえギー、あなたの奥さんはとっても物知りだわ。遠い国の料理のことも知ってるなんて。
奥さん？
She blinked twice. She glanced left, then right, and blinked once more. She pointed to herself with a particularly retracted claw. Aldi tiddled her head.
奥さん？え、いやだ、何この子、奥さんって、いやねもう、ね、大人をからかうんじゃないの、よね、ギ
アティ、
ー？何、ギ
この子のことなんだが何か聞いていないだろうか。尋ね人の依頼の話は聞いていないだろうか。2級か3級の等級市民で家族を探すとかそういった類の。
I like how he just ignores it. He's like, God damn it, every day with this shit. I'm sorry. Just completely just dodges the question. You can tell Addie totally likes Guy though. That's a thing.
聞いてないと思うけど。そもそもさ、どうして私と約束して前の席にこの女の子がいるのかなって。キーはまるで当然みたいな顔してるし、多分私聞いてないんだけどな。どうなの？どう思ってんのさ、そのあたり。またキー全然食べてないし飲んでないし、私だけゴリゴリ食べて飲んでるみたいな感じになってるし、割り勘なのに。
どうした？
別に何でもないのさ。今夜は遠慮した方が良さそうだって言ったの。それだけ。いい？遠慮しないと困るでしょ。
遠慮？
そう、遠慮。そこそこ大人な話。
Why was that something adults did? Guy shrugged his shoulders and gazed out the window. The sky hasn't changed since midday. It's still gray. The second sun, the one that only rises on rainy days. Yes, that sun held back far too much. Many people found it unpleasant on nights like these, but Guy didn't dislike the rainy sun. It would probably still be pouring down tomorrow. The rain seemed to be quite strong this time.
しばらくは続くか。助かるな。
That was right. The rain would continue falling for a few days. During that time, he'd be able to ignore the illusion of the clown. But even that only applied outdoors. It wouldn't work indoors. In places like this, it was the same as usual. When he was in his apartment, or when he was visiting a patient's home, it was no different than usual. Yes, just as usual. As usual. Nothing's changed. Nothing should have. And yet, for some reason, tonight seems to be an exception. Certainly nothing had changed in regards to his vision. Even now, the illusion danced its edge. The problem was the apartment's lock. It was open. The wooden front door had been left open. Not the same as usual. There's no way I could have forgotten to lock it. Not the same as usual. Is there someone inside? He looked through the open door, checking the room inside. Was someone in there or not? Robbery wasn't unusual, but there weren't many people on this tier with money. There were far better targets, 1 or 2 tiers higher. And yet the door was wide open. He could see clearly into the room. Even the engine lights were flickering. Who in the world?
遠慮しない人がいたの？
そういう冗談は言うものじゃない。少し下がっていなさい。
はい。
そういう顔をしない。廊下の方にいなさい。
Guy moved away from Kia and sharpened his senses. It was possible that someone was still in there, possibly some kind of burglar. A simple thief would just take the stuff and run, but there were a few who might lose their heads. He could only hope that this one was the former. He should have brought Atty along. Maybe he should have been carrying that handgun for self-defense like she always told him to. As if he had the resolve to carry anything like a handgun. He approached the door. He looked inside without entering. Someone drenched from the rain had left watery footprints. A child? No. A woman. Had Atty returned before him after they'd parted at the engine tavern? No, that couldn't be. She would have lied to Guy about that.
誰かそこにいるな。すぐに出てこい。物取りならそのまま出ていけ。
俺は悪くない。
A woman's voice. The moment he heard and recognized it, a strong impact assaulted Guy's entire body, shaking him to the core. A strong power began moving within his nerves, surging through them. It wasn't a gun. Of course, it wasn't a knife either. An attack-type phenomenon equation, either destructive or focused. His nerves and legs couldn't withstand the shock. He crumbled. His nerves were dead. His cranial organs couldn't move. As a result, Guy couldn't activate his own equation. He couldn't speak, he couldn't scream, he couldn't tell the girl to run.
君が悪いんだ。
This voice. It couldn't be. I know her. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. The sound of a clock, the sound of a clock. Is it time? Is it time? It continues to call. Tick tock, tick tock. Tick tock, tick tock. The second hand moves. It stops, pointing right at 0 o'clock. It is a pocket watch of white silver. It is a pocket watch carried by one man. The golden spiral staircase, towering into the darkness. The man standing at the foot of it is none other than the silver watch's owner. With his master in the corner of his eye, continuing to climb the golden spiral staircase, the man continues to gaze at the watch, motionless. The man continues to gaze at the watch, and speaks. Like a chrome-built, machine-wound doll, in an inorganic voice.
時間だ。今回はどれほど持つかね。せめて1分。いいや2分。
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I opened my eyes. For a moment, I was puzzled. My eyes were open, but everything was still black. There was a thick, familiar stench in the air. He heard the metallic scraping sound. He didn't know the place or the time. Where was this? He was sure that his eyes were open, but it was completely black. Where in the world was he? If nothing else, he wasn't lying on his bed. Guy was in the center of darkness, with both knees down on the cold stone floor.
場所時刻どこだここは
He took control of his Trubid consciousness. No windows, no brightness breaking through the gray clouds. That other sun wasn't here. Just darkness. A moist sensation. A far too familiar stench. Was it blood? He first learned the odor of rusted iron as a child. Now he could clearly tell what it was. Blood. The scent permeated the whole space. That metallic sound again. It echoed exceedingly well. Was he in a closed area? It was probably indoors. Underground? At that very least, this wasn't his apartment. All he had there was a small wine cellar. He had no underground room which could echo this well. His consciousness awakened further. His apartment, an intruder, a sudden attack. Yes, he'd been attacked with the phenomenon equation. Had he been unconscious since then? He was here now. He tried to move his body, and the metallic sound echoed again. Something heavy. His arms couldn't move freely. I'm connected to the wall somehow. Chained? He'd managed to grasp the big picture. He'd been taken away and confined somewhere. That assailant. That voice. He certainly had heard it before. He knew that voice.
進んで寄り添ったの自分がこの道をね勝負を選んだのも自分自身
Yes, this voice. The same as before. A voice he recognized. He knew, Guy knew it all too well. The extraordinary insanity poured out in excess, taking the form of a voice as it leaked out. That voice, the sound of insanity itself, overflowing.
おかしいと思うよな頭がおかしくなったと思うよな仕方ないじゃないかだってそうだものとっくの昔に狂ってしまった10年前そうだろなあそうだろ銀
Where was she? Not that far. Close by. Somewhere in this underground room.
男の子何度も何度も体を開いてわかるかわからないよお前にはわからない気が狂いそうになるの何度も何度も何度も何度もこらえて何度も何度も毛が垂れて何度も何度も何度も何度も
The voice was approaching him. Slowly, those footsteps came towards Guy.
こらえきれずに狂ってまた狂ってさ10年こっちはずっと休む暇なく何度も何度もさこの俺が
One step at a time, she approached. She wailed as she did. She approached. At long last, he was able to see the woman talking.
この俺が女なんかになったんだお笑いだろ笑えよおかしいだろナギ笑ってくれよ俺のこと
Salem. The smell of medicine bottles, the way he looked in a white coat, his high voice, laughing at imperial tabloids. Yes, it was him. His high voice, his soft yet shallow laugh. Despite all that had changed over the last 10 years, he recognized those two things. Guy didn't express those thoughts. Instead, the man opened his mouth. His clear smile soon disappeared. He saw his true expression.
笑えよお前も好きなだけ俺のこと笑えばいい哀れな男だとお前もさ
A beautiful outfit, resembling a butterfly. That face, that expression, and that skin. There was no mistaking it. It was Salem. I can't speak. Just what should I say to him?
でもね、大変だったんだよ。俺もこの10年女の真似事をして。そうさ、俺はね、子供を産もうって決めたんだ、ギー。こうなったからには女になろうって。潔いだろ、俺。男らしいだろ。受け入れようとしたんだ、俺。この体、女の体を。
He traced the skin on his own chest with his fingers. It was awkward, as if he was afraid of something, like a man touching a woman's skin for the first time. Salem's fingertips were shaking. He was touching his own skin, and yet they were shaking. That shaking came out in his voice, jostling the moistening space of the underground room.
女なんかに、この俺が女になろうと決めた。人生の全てを諦めたっていいのに。なのに、なあ、お笑いだよ。埋めないんだよ、俺じゃ。何をしても、何度も何度も何度も体を開いても、どんなに男を貪っても、この体は妊娠してくれないんだよ。
He shrugged his shoulders after speaking. That habit was the same as before, when he wore the white coat 10 years ago. He used to do that a lot, when berating himself for trivial failures. The smell of medicine bottles, how he looked in a white coat, his high voice laughing at imperial tabloids. Those hadn't changed. Had only his appearance changed? No, that was wrong. It was more than that.
なあ、笑いより気づいた時には俺も笑ったね。だってこの体には月経がないんだ。ないんだよ、この体には。子宮はものだ。あんなにも蔑んでいた女にされた。けどその生物的機能すら果たせない。だからなあ、銀。
His words stopped, and he brought his mouth to Guy's ear. As he laughed, he whispered,
俺はもう狂うしかないじゃないか。
Insanity. The smell of blood. It was still fresh. The sense of moisture, the windowless room, metal chains, and something horribly sticky. Could it really be called a lost cause? Trying to give birth to a child.
だから僕は子供を殺すのか。
The smell of blood was the mark of a tragedy. He'd long been convinced of that. He'd killed them because he couldn't give birth to them. He killed them instead of giving birth to them. A ridiculous compensation, utterly illogical. It should have been, but he'd become insane a long time ago.
そうだよ。だから子供を殺すんだ。だって殺すしかないだろ。他に俺に何ができるって言うんだよ。いい、変なこと言うなよ。
Salem laughed from the bottom of his heart, as if it was fun, with a face and voice insisting that he'd just heard a ridiculous joke. It was the same as 10 years ago, but with an insanity completely different from the old one.
そうお前が子供殺しの犯人か。
殺す。そう、殺すんだ。殺す。殺すか。いや、違う、待って。待ってくれよ、ギー。違う、殺していない。俺は殺してないんだ。 殺してるけど殺してない
What?
殺してない殺してるけど俺はただ捧げてるだけなんだよ
Offering the deaths of children. To who? To who?
捧げるんだ彼に
Him. Who is that? A chill ran through Guy's body, like the moment just before contracting a fever. He had a bad feeling about it. Who was it? A human? He heard nothing more than a male pronoun. So what was making him shiver so violently? He felt sick. Him. Who was it? A horrible pain throbbed against his head. What was it? Who was Salem talking about? Who did he mean by him? Another horrible headache. This was a stench? Of blood? No, of something else. An unendurable odor. A rotten smell. His consciousness shook. He felt as if his eyes were about to go white. The sensation resembled the phenomenon equation. Was someone attacking him? Physically, no. This was strong. Psychological. Someone was. Something was. It wasn't Salem. Right now, something was trying to control Guy's cranial nerves.
そうだきっとお前も気に入ってくれる綺麗な目をした人なんだきっとお前も仲間になれるよなあギーそうだろウェンディゴ
What beautiful eyes you have, sir! Stuck into the back of its neck was a spring screw. Salem screamed with delight as it showed itself behind him, a green fantasy. A hulking frame that resembled a horribly warped monkey, its head scraping against the stone ceiling as it advanced. The color of its fur, although tinged with blackened blood, was a disgusting green. One could count at least 28 uneven teeth in its palate. They could easily crush a human skull. It exhaled a rotten breath and smiled. A beast. A genuine beast. This is no human. This is no fantastic mutant. He knew. Guy's whole body stiffened. It wasn't possible. His body, used to terror, shook and became numb. That sick feeling was none other than terror. This beast called forth the original terrors of the human race. Scary, scary. No, no. He wished the thing before him was nothing more than an illusion. There was no way this thing could still be here. There's no way a creature could be here. And yet, here it is, in the flesh. The spring screw in the back of its neck is producing a grinding sound.
まさか本物これが嘘ありえない本物クリッターは
They should be dead. It can't be. This thing should have died 5 years ago. Guy knew the name of the beast. Wendigo. One of the 41 creatures that devoured people. One of the 41 great terrors that covered the city. There's no way I wouldn't know. Everyone who lived through the revival 10 years ago knew about them. The creatures. They are terror given powerful form. 10 years ago, this thing devoured 20% of the children in the lower tiers. Chrome blades and bullets all bounced right off it. It was among the strangest of the strange. Those weren't the eyes of a mutated human. No number of monsters could ever defeat such a brutal beast. Not a single physical law held any meaning. This was a supernatural phenomenon, and it killed people. just like a disease.
こいつは死んだ。
Eating away at people, killing them like they were nothing. The kings of fantasies, the creatures, black terrors that scattered red blood. Its hollow eye sockets looked towards him, and then the fantasy smiled. It wasn't virtual. It was real. The records said it was subjugated by the street night, but it was right there. It rattled his brains, his nerves, toyed with him, like Salem. It had told him to come. Come down here, to the depths of insanity. Do not disobey, but fall to ruin. I won't plant it in you. Just leap into the insanity that's already within you. A voice.
美しいだろなあ見ろよギーこいつが全部食らってくれる俺に地獄をくれた都市を壊してくれるいいかギー子供を全部食らえば都市は消えるんだ地獄は消える俺もお前も元に戻るんだよあの日に帰れるんだ俺たち全員全部なかったことになる約束なんだよギーウェンディゴは俺とそう契約してくれたこいつにできないことはない子供さえ殺せば子供さえ殺せばたったそれだけでいいんだから簡単じゃないかなあギーお前も一緒にやろう一緒に帰ろうギー
Salem laughed proudly, yet dependently. He didn't even try to hide his insanity. Had he been released by this thing? Was that why his expression was beaming so brightly? But, yes. But, that was a lie. Salem. To Wendigo, whose very drool ran red, there were no emotions other than appetite and bloodlust. The abilities of creature Wendigo. One has the nullification of physical acts. The other was terror, infection, and reformation. Had Salem's brain been destroyed by its reformation ability? His own brain was screaming. He couldn't hold out for much longer. Even his cranial organs administered the phenomenon equation were in agony. He could not suppress the power working so hard to distort him.
拒むな受け入れろよギーお前には用意してあるんだ
Prepared what? I know what. Indeed. Over there. That girl. She's chained to the wall. Like a knight waiting upon a king, Salem reverently lowered his head before the fantasy, beside the open black curtain in the darkness. It was Kia. Her eyes were closed and she was slumped down, chained to the wall. Salem hadn't let the girl go. He'd captured her and brought her here. The girl isn't moving. The thought, she couldn't be, is draining all the blood out of my body. She couldn't be dead. Had Salem killed her? When he'd lost consciousness amidst the darkness. His fingertips numbed with terror, moved. He forced his restrained arms into motion, and a sharp pain shot through his creaking joints. The clang of the chains rang out. The creature's power was violently twisting his nerves. Guy screamed, ignoring everything that tried to cloud his awareness with madness. Are you dead or alive? He didn't know, and yet, anyone but her. Are you alive? Please be alive. Guy begged and screamed. You'd better be alive. We have to get out of here right now.
そんなに心配するなよ大丈夫まだちゃんと生きているお前にもちゃんと見せてやる
Show me?
一度目にすれば癖になるんだ素敵だよキ 君も絶対に気に入ってくれる。わからないって顔だな。じゃあ実演してみせるよ。ねえウェンディゴ、この女の子を送って議員に見せてあげて。俺はね、初めて食わせた時に確信したんだ。
Convinced. Is that why you kill?
やめろサレム。お前は今正気を失っている。
失ってるから何だってできるだろ。あの日より前に帰れるなら俺たちを何度もする。
Is that why you kill?
やめろ。
都市のもたらしたものなんかに寄り添って何を考えてるんだよナギ。これは俺たちのために仕方のないことだ。
Is that why you kill?
都市はこのインガノックは俺たちの敵だ。気を許すな。敵と交わるな。こいつらは全員殺せ。お前が言うんだよ。殺せ食えって。さあやれよ議員。俺と一緒に帰れるんだ。
Is that why you talk about killing? Is that why you say those things, Salem?
やめろ。やめろ。サレム。やめろ。
I don't like only having one option here. So I think this is where if I would have got like the order of selecting those fucking options in that thing in the last video, I think I would have had another option here instead of closing my eyes. I closed my eyes. Salem's screams wouldn't stop. He continued wailing something Guy couldn't make out. Ah, that's right. He did the same thing 10 years ago. Within the darkness, he thought, let's put an end to this. He couldn't endure seeing his old friend drown in madness. He had to stop him, but Guy had no means of doing that. None at all. Just like 10 years ago, he couldn't answer someone's cry for help. So he'd answered it now. He waited for Salem, with his eyes closed. Something touched his neck, along with the stench of the beast's breath. Something cold. Those 10 nightmarish years would end here. That wasn't so bad. He was tired anyway. The illusion, which should have been at the edge of his vision, at long last, the clown, disappeared. Well, shit. Yeah, definitely, because I got the thing wrong, the order and shit. Alright. Well, fuck. Anything after this, or, wait for it, maybe? Well, that's cool. Fuck. Alright, so that's a thing. Yeah, we're gonna have to go redo all that stuff and get to the end of where were we at the last video, so I can go ahead and do that in the right order. I'll probably look that up at some point and know how to properly do it, so I can read everyone's and unlock all the mosaic traps, so I actually have the freaking options. And then, yeah, so until next time, thank you all for watching, and yeah, fuck, damn. Damn. Alright, but seriously now, until next time, everyone, we're gonna save Kia in the next video. So, yeah. Until then, bye-bye.